Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome to the broadcast, the show here. This is a conversation I'm just starting here. Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome to the broadcast, the show here. Stream it to YouTube and Substack, and maybe Facebook at at a later time, or maybe just soon here. But nevertheless, I wanted to start this brand new conversation called Fireside Chat with Curtis. And as some of you may know, if you've been watching my content, I am an executive coach, helping high-achieving men master the art of integrated leadership and authentic masculine presence. So we got a great conversation for you. Great show for you, and I wanted to make this conversation a little bit more lighthearted, but nevertheless, I'm prepared to tackle some of the things or questions that you might have related to maybe the man in your life, if you're a woman, a man in your life, I'm prepared to tackle, or if you're married or spouse or significant other. So I want to be able to answer those questions that you might have. So if you are a woman, you are absolutely invited. It's not just for men only, but you're absolutely invited to this conversation. So we want to kind of make it lighthearted but fun, and just again being intentional as well. And hopefully the goal is to answer some of your questions and make it lighthearted but fun. Maybe have some later conversations if needed. So that being said, guys, so welcome to Fireside Chat with Curtis. I'm your host. Maybe have some later conversations. I recently did an article. So that being said, guys, so welcome to Fireside Chat with Curtis. I recently did an article, and I want to talk about that article, and I want to talk about any other subject matter that you would like to talk about as well. So this article was entitled "Talk About That Article," and I want to talk about get it on my other monitor matter that you would like to talk about as well. I just recently posted it to LinkedIn and also onto Substack. Get it on my other monitor. It's called "The Lonely Man at the Summit." Now, this article for me was intense because it did take me a minute to write it. It did take me a minute to put to collect my thoughts and just to kind of orchestrate it in the way that I thought it was going to be compelling. Because this article spoke a lot about myself, really. Being a man, obviously, but also a man who's shooting for the stars as well. As most men are, maybe not all of them, but I would say a good part of them. Men are shooting for the stars, and oftentimes we deal with things, and as we are laboring to shoot for the stars, we're going through certain things, we're going through challenges, and especially in the way of high achieving men. And it's not to say that other men aren't dealing with certain things. So it's definitely not to say that, but because we all are on some level. And again, this conversation is not just a man-centered conversation, but it's definitely not. It's a lot of the same things that even women deal with. Sometimes we call them by different names and things of that nature, but and in fact are a lot of the same things that women deal with, just people deal with, and things of that nature. But sometimes we, in fact, are a lot of the same things that coaches, as people who are being an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial spirit, I would say, we have a tendency to trying to create business, being an entrepreneur, trying to create our own different niches. We have a tendency to try and slice the pie this way, cut it this way. Oh, I'm a coach for this, I'm a coach for this. But at the end of the day, it really all kinds of ties in, and it's just a matter of our language that really kind of separates it. But and if you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, most of us are really dealing with the same thing. Again, we deal with it differently, obviously. So I want to talk about the lonely man at the summit, because that lonely man at the summit could also be a lonely woman at the summit. So it's not just about men are just get to the top of that summit, if you will. And women get to the top, they're not experienced because they are. But the reality of it is that for us men, we oftentimes don't talk about our feelings and the things that we're going through. And that is, by and large, one of the biggest dilemmas that we deal with as men is not necessarily being able to communicate our feelings. And again, it can come from a host of different reasons and ways to why we're not communicating or why we don't communicate. And by and large, I would probably say it's because of our fathers. First and foremost, and it doesn't mean that our fathers were bad men or anything like that, but it's just the nature of who we are. And I think a part of this nature is really, I would say, it has been extended to society. It has absolutely been extended to society in regards to how society has put out certain information, and it has absolutely been we as people have just kind of adhered to that. Society has put out certain information, allowed society to set the rules for us, so to speak. So I think that's a lot of what we're dealing with. So this lonely man at the top of the summit, he could be absolutely anyone. A man that is achieving, a man that's going after, a man who this lonely man at the top who believes that he's unstoppable, and a man that is achieving, a man that's going after. It could be for any reason where once he arrives at the top of that summit, that he in fact is dealing with some things. He's dealing with some broken relationships, and I would even venture to say that the bulk of for us as men, once we reach the top of that summit, if you will, the bulk of what we're dealing with is the relationships that we have not garnered, and I would even extend that to further conversation in regards to that. A lot of times for us men who are at the top of that summit, if you will, we're making a decision to forego the personal relationships because they can oftentimes be complicated. And what relationship isn't complicated? There's ideally a typical love and hate thing going on in relationships. That's just a fact of life. That's just the way it is. And I think for us as men, when we choose someone in a relationship, we're choosing a person for a specific reason. And oftentimes we can find ourselves biting off more than we can chew because we're choosing a person for a specific reason. For us as men, a lot of times when we can find ourselves biting off a woman, we can chew because or trying to build a relationship with someone. For us as men, a lot of times we see them for where they are at that moment. And this is just kind of how men are wired. We see them for how they are at that moment. We see them for where they are at that moment. And this is just kind of how men oftentimes that's not always the case. Whereas that people change, guys. Let's face it, people change. And as people are changing, that's not always what happens. The case. Whereas that they don't fit that box that we have placed them in. And when they don't fit the box that we sometimes as men have placed our significant other, our spouse in, that one we chose to marry, when they don't fit that box anymore. Men have placed our significant other, our spouse in, essentially the shuffle. We're just kind of going through a tailspin trying to put things back together. And not because we're just kind of the woman has done anything wrong, but it's just that people change in relationships. And if I could count, we're just kind of the woman has done anything, or if I was given a dime for every time I heard a woman say, and if I could count, oh, he changed, and not just if I was given a even for to hear my wife say it, but just even across the internet, oh, he changed, and not just. But the reality of it is that my wife said, but just even across the we're all changing. Oh, he changed. We're all changing. And I think that to some level, the women also see the men as, oh, he's a caring person, and he's loving, he's kind, and he's all these things that I've desired. The men as, but let's face it, caring person, when all of our stuff starts to come out, and he's all these things that or to show up on demand, so to speak, let's face when it can be very difficult to come out, and he's all again putting the cat back in the bag, so to speak, on demand, so to speak, because now as a woman she's seen that the person that she fell in love with, that he's changed, and the man sees that the woman that he fell in love with, that he decided to marry this woman and to make her his wife for the rest of his life. He's seeing that she's changed, and let's face it, the reality of it is that change is inevitable, and it's going to be nearly nearly impossible, nearly impossible for each of us to see the inevitable. And many different turns and tweaks and avenues and nooks and crannies that are going on within each of our lives. And many different turns and hence this article, The Lone Man at the Summit, because oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, it is for us as men, we have not, the lone man at the summit, because oftentimes dealt, as I mentioned earlier, with relationships for us as in a healthy way. We have not, the lone man at the summit, or the relationships, again, could be many different things, but, or that the relationships that we were a part of, or especially starting at home. I like to see relationships at home, our family structure as the fundamentals of relationships. And they are the core, they're the foundations for our relationships, how they begin and how they end. And oftentimes, because we've picked up so much stuff from the very beginning, the foundational space. And oftentimes we are, we've bringing that stuff from our stuff, our parents' stuff. And I've talked about this before in a previous conversation, as that, and oftentimes we are not only carrying our stuff, we're trying to figure out who we are, but previous conversation, well before we can come to that place of who we are, our stuff, we're trying to figure out we've got to, but previous conversation, peel back the layers before we can come to that of the things that our parents have given us, our stuff, we're trying to figure out unintentionally as it may have been, peel back the layers. But the reality of it is that oftentimes when our parents have not dealt unintentionally as it may have been, when our parents have not dealt with their stuff, oftentimes when our parents, a number of things show up unintentionally as it may have, meaning that our parents have not dealt with their stuff shows up in us. A number of things show up, essentially mirroring, meaning that we're acting out the things that our parents have not in us dealt with. We're dealing with the pressure of, meaning that we're acting out the very same thing that they were under, have not, or dealt with, chose not to deal with. And we're dealing with the pressure. And it doesn't mean that our parents are the very same thing that they were under, or there's something wrong with them. It's just life, guys. And I think that I think more often than not, we need to be prepared to accept there's something wrong with, because if not, we can find ourselves putting just undue burdens on our parents, even as we are adults. Because if not just find ourselves putting a teenager saying, "Oh, my mother messed my life up, my father messed my life up." No, there are grown people, adults, men and women who are well into their adult life, but my father who are dealing with this, ladies and gentlemen. Men and women who are well into their adult life, who are dealing with this blame game mentality, ladies and gentlemen. And some of, or a lot of what some of the adults have said can be absolutely true. But the reality of it is that it's now in our lap. Some of the adults have said, and again, I would not even begin to go that far in regards to say, "Oh, our parents did it intentionally, or they knew better." In most cases, they did know better. Much in the same fashion, we don't know better. Our parents did it intentionally, or they knew better. So if you can imagine, be it a woman at the top of the summit or a man at the top of the summit, well before we can, so if you can imagine, deal with our stuff and figure out what our purpose is, or figure out who we are coming into that space, deal with becoming the things that we've been desiring. Well before we can have those conversations, we've oftentimes will have to make our way through the well before we can have those through the stuff. Oftentimes we'll have the content, the heaps of stuff that our parents have not dealt with. And once again, this does not mean that they are bad people. The heaps of stuff that our parents, it just means that life has affected them as well. This does not mean that they are bad. Life has affected them as well. So we have to we have to be prepared to be considerate about that and to understand. And this is where the compassion comes from. And this is where the healing comes from. We have to be prepared to be considerate about that. And this is where the healing comes from, ladies and gentlemen. We have to be prepared to put those things out there. And the interesting thing about that is that when we're not prepared to put those things out there and deal with them out there, and those things will eventually expose us. When we're not prepared to put those things out there, it's kind of like dealing with the sore thumb or dealing with the toothache that started off as something small, and you said to yourself, okay, I'm going to go to the dentist, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to the dentist because it's hurting a little bit more, and yet inevitably that toothache, I'm going to go to the dentist, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, the pain gets worse, and perhaps it's working its way where now you have to get a root canal or something like that. And if you've ever had a root canal, you know that's painful. But nevertheless, that's where they have to extract your entire tooth. And if dig out the things that have been broken inside your tooth or something like that. But nevertheless, I'm not a dentist, but I know that's what I've heard and different things I've seen online. And so that can absolutely be painful. So you've got a small thing and different things I've seen in the way of the example of the toothache I've just shared with you, where the pain started out small, and we put it off, and we put it off, and we put it off, to the point where now toothache I've just shared with you really causing us discomfort, and we've got to get to the dentist, perhaps an emergency visit. And it's the same way in the way of our relationships. Oftentimes as men, we forsaken those relationships because we have experienced them, and relationships we haven't experienced them. And so what happens is that you have a man who reaches the top of the summit, who's crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's in the professional arena. He's well known, reaches the top of the summit, who's crossed all the T's. You're a woman, absolutely this applies to women as well. Well known, he's well known, have not done well with relationships. You're a woman, absolutely this applies to the same things apply to men. He's well known, vice versa, done well with relationships. So understand the same things that apply to men. But this place of being invisible, understand where that could possibly start from. The same things that apply to men. Because this man has been invisible, reached the top of the summit, possibly start from. He is because this accomplished all kinds of different things. Reached the top of the summit, possibly start from. He's got the resume, he's got the connections, he's got the network. He's got the resume, he's got the toys, he's got the cars, he's got the assets, he's got the so resume. Think about it. He's got the toys. It can sound like, oh, he's got the assets. What problems could he have? So think about it. Hence the title of the article. Sound like, oh, the lonely man at the summit. So the problems that most of us have is that, to include women, is that we're lonely in most ways. The problems that most of us have is that, and we can come off as stoic a lot of times, especially as men. We're lonely in most ways. Women will at times reach out, not all the time, but in most cases, women are known for reaching out and saying, hey, just starting a conversation and finding the likeness in each other, known for reaching out and saying, and as men, we oftentimes have a difficult time doing that with each other. So this conversation tonight on this Fireside Chat with Curtis, myself, we're going to again dive more into this invisible fireside, because he's feeling invisible for a reason now, or she's feeling invisible for a reason. Okay, it's not just by accident. It's not because there's necessarily something wrong with them, but oftentimes the things that we fail to tackle, the things that we fail to deal with, much in the same way of that toothache example I had just mentioned to you. Whereas that the things in life related to our relationships, again, we may have those professional networks zipped up, sewn up, and know exactly what to do. We can speak on cue. We know the right language. We can say things the right way. Again, we've got the performance down in most cases. We can speak on cue. We know the right. When it comes to the personal relationships, again, we've got the performance down in personal relationships. Our personal relationships as high achieving men. That's oftentimes where the loneliness comes in. Our personal relationships. It's because of our personal relationships. And as I mentioned earlier, in most cases, those personal relationships they've been difficult for us. And as I mentioned, they've been difficult for us. And so we find ourselves, they've been difficult for us. Creating a new path, they've been difficult for us. For our professional lives, if you will. And not to say that our professional lives don't matter, because they do to us. But we can find ourselves just forging ahead and building a professional life rather than a personal life. And so now, when it gets forging ahead and building a time, at least the promotions have come in, and yet another promotion has come in, and you're just at the top of your game. We can find ourselves, the promotions have come in, and lonely, because let's face it, the reality is that human connection is lonely, because that's who we are. And without human connection, we can feel lonely in whatever capacity of work that you're in. And without the loneliness can come from, again, a host of different things. It can come from being misunderstood. Whatever capacity it can come from, obviously, not dealing with the things that we needed to deal with that come from our that family structure. It can come from, obviously, not dealing with the basics of who we are that come from the fundamentals of who we are, that family structure. So, and if those things, or if we have not recognized that those things were broken, sometimes we don't even know that they're broken. So, and if those things, and so what happens is that we have to be prepared to do an assessment. Sometimes we don't even know that they're broken. We have to be prepared to do an assessment. And so what happens is that relationships that we've had throughout the course of our lives thus far, we have to be, have you had a lot of relationships? You find yourself in relationships as a man where you are not making a connection with other, have you had a lot of other people as a whole, as a man where, because let's just face it, here's the thing about relationships, similar to that toothache example that I shared with you earlier, because is that, here's the thing about relationships, the more we fail to make connections with people and building healthy relationships, we fail to, the more we're going to find ourselves and building feelings, we fail to, and to a point or place, well, in our own minds, we will appear to be cut off to a point, or and it's not because someone has cut us off or decided to put us in some kind of box or isolate us, and it's not, but we're isolated because of our own thinking. We're isolated because of the things that we have chose not to deal with our own thinking. That is one of the biggest reasons that we're isolated. We have chose not to. So this loneliness at the top of the summit, that is one. It can absolutely be avoided. It can absolutely be dealt with. So this loneliness at the top of the summit, right? We can absolutely conquer that thing. We've got to be prepared to look at our emotions, right? We can absolutely, again, this all stems from that. We've got to be prepared to look at our family structure, the fundamentals of who we are. Again, this all building blocks from the basics of it, the foundation, the family structure, at the fundamentals of who we are. We are the building blocks, our family basics. That's the core of who we are. Our family structure, and sometimes our families, our family basics, that's the core of who we are. Is the and sometimes it's a limitation that we need to get beyond. Our family basics. Again, it's not to say that any one person has done it intentionally, but the reality of it is I've kind of hammered in again several different times, is that any one person has done it intentionally, but the reality most of what we're dealing with is extending from our families several different times, is that and when we're not prepared to deal with those things, most of what we're dealing with, those things are usually the things, and when we're not prepared to deal with those things, so to speak, that has gotten worse over time. That's how we deal with or handle our relationships, so to speak, that has from the very foundation of the premises of our family. That's how we deal with or handle our relationships. Every relationship is from the very foundation of the premises is an offshoot of our family, of how we dealt with our families. Or how our families dealt with us, how we communicated is an offshoot of our family, right? How we dealt with our thinking, or how our families dealt with different perspectives, our mindset is an offshoot of our family, right? So that's just a reality, and so but it doesn't have to be a continued reality. So and this is oftentimes where we get that lonely man at the top of the sun. Continued reality. So now this article is actually on LinkedIn, so I would encourage you to check it out on LinkedIn. You can find me over on LinkedIn under Curtis Brooks. There's not a whole lot of us, but there's a few of us, but you can search me out over on LinkedIn under Curtis Brooks. You can also find me on Substack under Curtis Brooks as well, or Men's Life Coach. You can also find that article again also over here on Substack, The Lonely Man at the Summit, Men's Life Coach. And also I've got a website, guys, so you can check out our website at bit.ly, Integrated Leadership. And also I've got now on this website, guys, I just finished it, or it's not almost, it's not leadership perfectly finished, just at, not just at, there's still a few things that I need to take care of, but nevertheless, the website is bit.ly / that's the bit.ly link, bit.ly / integrated leadership, and you can check out more about who I am and what I do as an executive coach, helping men to integrate that leadership, and you can check out more about with their personal and professional lives, and build that leadership out better, become better men, and again, not in the way of society. We're not talking about toxic men. That's not what we do, because we don't deal with that. We're looking at men who are ready to. We're not talking about ready to build out their lives, ready to answer some of the tough questions that they have been evading for a period of time. So that's why when you go over to that link there, you go over it's that link. It's bit.ly / integrated leadership. You'll find more about what I do, as I said earlier, as an executive coach, and you'll also find my men's group called Face Value. So more information over there. There's a link that's going to take you right to that page here at the main header on the website. So you'll find more information about that. So with that men's group, guys, we're only accepting 10 to 15 men for that men's group, because it is going to be an intimate setting, guys, because it can be hard or difficult to men for that men's group, because it is going to be an intimate setting, guys, because it can be hard or fill that space, so to speak, from a spiritual and emotional and mental space, and when you've got more than 10 to 15 men pulling on you, and really pulling on each other, and so there's a lot that goes on in that space, and so I want to kind of keep it down to 10 to 15 men. So check out our website again. That's bit.ly integrated leadership, just as it sounds and spells, bit.ly / integrated leadership. So we've been talking about the article that I've just recently posted on LinkedIn and also on Substack. So The Lonely Man at the Summit. Now I've given multiple different reasons why the man is lonely, and also to mention that though yes, I work with men only, so if you're a woman, you're absolutely invited to this conversation, and to know that women in most cases are dealing with men only. Because oftentimes when we change change, and to know in a way, especially women in most cases, when we change as people, which change is inevitable, and I talked about that earlier for a moment, is that change is inevitable, and that is just the way life is. And I can tell you a lot about who I am, but know that I'm still going to change. And this change isn't necessarily a lot about who I am. The change is drastic, or it's just so alarming and things of that nature. But ideally, we're not the same people. Change is drastic, or it's just so alarming, even with the best intentions. But we're not the same people that we were in high school. We're different people, and I know that's a drastic change, but I guess depending on how old you are, but nevertheless, we are not the same people as we were when we were 15 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. So life changes, guys. The information changes. Things that we once believed to know about ourselves in our own minds, we thought this was concrete. Information changes, and so now we've been persuaded differently through the information that we've received. So change is inevitable, guys. And so now this invisible man, again, he has reached the top of the summit. He is dealing with a host of things. The bulk of what he's doing with his relationship. Now, he has a great relationship with his profession. And let me clarify relationship. Relationship is, now he has a great relationship with his profession. Between obviously a man and a woman, two friends, best friends. It can be the relationship between a chair and the legs that hold the chair up. Best friends. So we're talking about anything that's related, that's making a connection, that's forging a bond, if you will. So. Okay, and so here's the thing, and now that you mentioned that, that's forging a relationship over time. And so here's the thing, and now that you mentioned that, come into an agreement. In most cases, that agreement is unspoken. But when you come into an agreement, been living with each other for a period of time, or been in a relationship for an extended period of time, but you know the person that you've been living with each other, that you're in a relationship with, been in a relationship for an extended period of time. But when I say know the person, over a period of time, they're just unspoken rules. And so most cases there were unspoken rules, or just over a period of time they're just unspoken rules, things that we just, and boundaries, if you will, that we knew not to cross, or just were expected for us to know, even with our own families, our immediate families. So now that we have grown up and we've entered into just different relationships, various relationships, maybe perhaps gotten married or whatever the case might be, grown up. In most cases, we have extended that same thinking into relationships with our spouse or significant other, relationships as a parent with our children. So if mom was a yeller, or mom was not a yeller, as a parent in most cases. So as a mother, you would probably be the same way with your children. And likewise, if a man has experienced his parents yelling, that's what he does. And that's my area. And so, and I say that not in a proud way, but I'm saying it in a way where it's that I too have had to recognize my stuff, and I say that and be prepared to work on some things. I'm saying it in a way where it's that because I too have had to recognize my stuff. Let's face it, again, as I said earlier, no family is important. No family, let's face it, has the key to no family to figuring this thing out. And so we essentially have to figure it out together. And so in doing so, we essentially have to figure it out together. We're going to make some mistakes, and so we're going to make some mistakes. Doing so, some of the things that my mother has done, and as a parent, she's later apologized. And sometimes when you think about it as a parent, or even as a leader, has done, and as a parent, she's later you're only going off of what you know. Sometimes when you think about it as a parent, and at the time, even as a leader, you may not even realize that Wow, you're only going off of what you know. That didn't even make any sense. And you don't realize while you're doing it. You may not even realize. And it takes someone else to, you're only going off of what at times to look on the inside. And you don't realize from a bird's eye view of what you've said. Someone else to, sometimes we say some crazy things or some outlandish things, or you don't realize from a bird's eye view of our habits and behaviors. Sometimes we say some crazy things or some outlandish things, because that's just what we know. From a bird's eye view of it sounds like it's right. Habits and behaviors. Sometimes we and to us, but the reality of it is that that's just what we know. From a bird's eye view of our spouse grew up differently, and to us, but the reality of it is that that's just what we know. That also our spouse, they're growing, grew up differently. Their behavior, but perhaps their mom or their father wasn't it yet. That also, and so naturally, guess what? They're growing, grew up differently. There's going to be some conflict. Perhaps their mom or their father wasn't it. That also. Sometimes that conflict in relationships are also a part of what drives that man, and being successful in a professional life relationships are also highly successful. What drives that man in his professional space or arena, successful in a professional but yet lonely are also highly successful. What drives that man in his professional now, this is powerful, ladies and gentlemen, because but yet lonely. It's not only just affecting men. Now, although I'm a men's life coach, executive coach for men, the reality of it is that it's human nature. Although I'm a men's relationships are not easy sometimes for men. The reality of it is that, and as I said before in a previous conversation, is that you have to be intentional about threading that needle. And as I said before in a previous conversation, is that you've got to cut out the distractions about that often come up, show up in life. As I said before in a previous conversation, and I think that's in most cases how relationships are show up in life, like threading a needle. And I think it's a narrow in most cases how relationships are show up in life, like and threading a needle. Just when you, it's a narrow, can find yourself feeling comfortable, show up in life, like and you can find yourself having just when you thread the needle again. You can find yourself feeling comfortable, meaning that now you've got to humble yourself, and yet you can find yourself having just to when you thread the needle on a different level now, feeling comfortable, meaning that now you've got to humble yourself, and yet and it takes work. Thread the needle on a different. It takes work, feeling comfortable, meaning that now you've got to. And this is yet another reason why we can find ourselves lonely. On a different, it takes the lonely man at the summit. Because relationships is another reason why we can find ourselves lonely. Relationships, true relationships. Because not relationships that feed our fetishes and our desires. Relationships, true, but relationships that feed our soul. Because not relationships that feed our relationships that feed the very essence of who we have learned and who we have become. Not relationships, the process of becoming. Relationships that feed the very those people that we meet along the way. Learn as we're building relationships. Perhaps that's your spouse in your relationship. Those people that we meet, or your significant other. Learn as we're building relationships. I'm not talking about the relationships that feed our relationship. Those people that we meet, or thousands and thousands of different desires and fetishes. I'm talking about the relationships. I'm talking about the relationships that feeds our soul. Thousands, the very essence of who we are. Desires and fetishes. That place where you find the authentic person. That place where you find the person who's comfortable with who they are. That place where you find the not being persuaded by that place where you find all of these different conversations, but comfortable with who they are. Not being knowing that in most cases, place where you find all of these different the world, society that we live in, with who they are. Not being knowing that in most cases, place where you find it's all of these different anchored and pulling us in different directions. Who they are. Not being knowing that in most cases, and when you've been walking in a certain space for so long, as a man or as a woman, you come to know certain things. You come to appreciate certain things as a man, and in doing so, you come to accept certain things, and when you and in doing so, take fully upon this understanding, accept certain. You know and when you the plans that the society has prepared for us to a degree. We may not know everything, but society distractions in life just don't show up for us to a degree. We may not know everything, but things in life happen for a reason. In life just don't show up for us. Hence, the man, the lonely man at the summit. In life happen for a reason. In life just don't show up for us. Hence, the man. In most cases, these things have been orchestrated at the summit. In life, whether of our own doing, hence the man, or not. In most cases, these things have been orchestrated. And so now we have to, whether of our own men, hence the man, or not. In most cases, these things we have to be prepared to. And so now we have to, whether of our own men, make sure that in most cases, we have to be prepared to the orchestra, the members of the orchestra that are playing in this band that was already established for us. We have to be prepared to members of the orchestra that are playing, cut out the dysfunction was already established for us. We cut out the members who are not intended to be there. Cut out the dysfunction. The members of the orchestra that who are not in just come to wreak havoc. And all these members can be, again, representing the distractions. Just come to wreak havoc. And all these members, we were essentially, again, representing the distractions, given the job of being the maestro and all these of this particular orchestra of yours, given the job of orchestra, being the maestro. And now you've got to make sure everyone is in tune. Given the job of orchestra, you've got to make sure that everyone now knows her part. Make sure everyone is in tune. Given the job of orchestra, and there are going to be some shabby members within your heart. Make sure everyone is in tune. Your organization, and there are going to be some, and you've got to be prepared to be the leader to weed those things out because they're no longer benefiting you. And there are going to be some, and you now this is interesting because leader to weed those things out. This is about no longer benefiting you. Leadership as well. And you now this is interesting because the man at the summit is about leadership as well. And now this is interesting because the man at the summit, he's a great leader in most cases. But he hasn't, he's a great leader, figured out on how to lead in his personal life. And he hasn't, he's a great the personal life, figured out on how to lead in most cases. Personal life is the life that truly is, and he hasn't connected to our spiritual life in most cases. Now, this is important for many, many different reasons. Connected because just as a relationship with a good friend, many different reasons, or with your parents, well, maybe not your parents, but with a good friend, a good friend you've known for years, or with your parents, you've had some blowouts with them. What I call blowouts is that you've had some disagreements with them. You've known some big, some small, but you've had some disagreements, and along the way you found your way, and reconnecting your friendship, some big, some small, but you've had some getting back together, and deciding to say, okay, man, hey, that was, hey, it was my fault. I was, having a bad day, whatever the case might be. Getting back together. And for women, the same thing applies. Deciding to have those disagreements. We all have those disagreements in relationships. Having a bad day, whatever the case might be. And it's the same way. And for women, the same applies. Deciding to have those disagreements. It is about a relationships. Having a bad day, whatever the case might be. And when we can't get the personal relationships right, it is about a relationships. It can be very difficult, and when we can't get the personal relationships right, sense or connecting the dots, it can be in our spiritual lives, because so much of our spiritual life, just as connecting the it can be just as it's human nature for us to so much of our spiritual life connect with people, just as build relationship with people. We all desire relationships for us on some level of our spiritual life. Doesn't mean that you have to have a relationship with 300 of your best friends. We all desire relationships. It could just be a couple best friends. 5, 10, 2, 3, 300. But nevertheless, the point is that a couple best friends. Every relationship is going to go through something, some kind of cycle. Nevertheless, the point is that some of our stuff is going to show up. Every relationship is going to go through something, some kind of cycle. Nevertheless, and sometimes it's in some cases we're not going to know that it's us. We in most cases are going to say, "Oh, it's what they said. It's what he said. It's what she said. Oh, he said something and kind of just rubbed me the wrong way, and it's just I didn't really like that. Whatever they said. Again, a host of different things. But every relationship goes through rubbed me the wrong way, and it's just I didn't really like that. Whatever they said. Again, and a host of different sometimes it has to be every relationship validated from a different angle. Sometimes we have to reintroduce ourselves. I'm talking about a regular physical relationship from a different angle. And it's the same thing in our spiritual introduce ourselves. I'm talking about a regular physical is that when you're building a relationship, oftentimes the ugly part of us comes out. That we don't know. When you're building a relationship, oftentimes we didn't know it was there. Comes out. And sometimes we don't even know why we're upset with our friend or whoever he or she might be. And sometimes we don't even know why we're upset with. And if we were asked, well, what happened? In some cases, the separation from that last argument or that last disagreement has, we're so far from it. And in some cases, we don't even remember the argument. Separation from that last argument or that last disagreement has, we don't even know what it was about. And in some cases, we don't even remember the argument. So it is the same way in our spiritual lives. We don't even know what it was about. When we fail to make those connections, it is the same way and from a physical standpoint. And so on the importance of relationships and knowing that every relationship is going to go through its trial. And so on the every relationship is. And knowing that every relationship is going to go again, as I mentioned earlier, relationships, marriage. It's like, and again, as I mentioned earlier, you have to essentially become small. It's like, not that we're small and insignificant. No, that's not what I mean. You have to, sometimes we have to humble ourselves. Not that we're small and insignificant and make room for the other person. Sometimes we have to humble ourselves. Now the challenge is sometimes the other person doesn't know how to humble themselves and make room for you. Sometimes we have to. Now that can be the challenge. Now the challenge is sometimes the other person doesn't know how to humble themselves and make room for you. The lonely man at the summit. Now that can be the challenge. Now the challenge. So when we find ourselves as men running from those relationships, sometimes and make room for you. The lonely man. Not because we don't want them. Now that can be the challenge. Now the challenge. So when we find oftentimes because we feel misunderstood. Sometimes and make room for you. The lonely man. Not because we feel misunderstood. And when we feel misunderstood, we in most cases will disengage. We feel misunderstood. Not because that's what we want to do. We in most cases will, but it can be difficult sitting there with the confusion. Not because that's what, or at least the assumed confusion that we're dealing with. Difficult. Whether it's real or whether it's not validated on some confusion that we're it's just our own thinking, our own whether it's real or conflict that we dealt with, whether it's not validated on some confusion that we it's just our own thinking, upbringing, our own whether it's on how we were raised, conflict that and now we meeting more the conflict or the upbringing of how our spouse or significant other was raised, and now these two different things or ideas and concepts of being raised or growing up as children, now adults, and now this is all we know, ideas and concepts of being raised. And so it's going to be really a meeting of the minds, truly is. And so it can be difficult to know how to make room for each other. Meeting of the minds truly is. And so it can be difficult the invisible man at the center.
Meeting of the minds truly is.
Now, he doesn't just get there because, as I mentioned earlier, because he doesn't have anything to do at the summit. He doesn't just show up. Now, he doesn't just get there because, as I mentioned earlier, because he doesn't have anything to do at the summit. He shows up because he doesn't just show up. In most cases,
Get there because,
as I mentioned earlier, because he does not answer the important questions that he, in most cases, has been plagued with. Now, let's face it, man or woman, child, it doesn't matter, has been plagued. In most cases, life plagues us with questions that we, child, it doesn't matter, don't want to answer sometimes. In most cases, life plagues us with questions that we, those difficult questions in front of us where we just don't want to answer sometimes. I'll put it off another day. Again, example of that. Those difficult questions where it says we don't deal with the minor pain. I'll put it off another day. Now we might just put some Orgel on it and deal with it that way, or we don't take an aspirin or something like that. I'll put it off and we might just say, okay, I'm feeling better. And yet that pain oftentimes comes back. Take an aspirin or something like worse. I'll put it off, and we might just say, okay. In some cases, not worse enough where we're saying, hey, I'm going to drop what I'm doing, and I'm going to go to the dentist. But in some cases, it's the same not worse enough where we're saying, hey, I'm going to drop what I'm doing, the minor, and I'm going to go to the dentist. Infractions that show up in relationships, when we don't deal with them, we try to. I'm going to go to the dentist. Infractions that show up, cover them up with maybe buying our deal with them, wife, your spouse a gift or something like that. Infractions that and cover them up. Yet your spouse is saying, "Well, okay, this gift is nice, thank you," but we didn't deal with the matter that we need to deal with. Your spouse, and so rest assured that matter is under the rug or the carpet, somewhere it's just kind of doing its thing. That matter is, and it's growing and it's growing, it's growing. And rest assured, your spouse, in most cases, when something else shows up, and it will, and it's growing, it's growing. And rest assured, your spouse, in most cases, it's going to be shows up. In most cases, not the subject at hand, but the thing that we didn't deal with. It's going to be, and shows up. Oftentimes, it's not the subject. That's not just related to just dealing with someone else. That's related to dealing with us on a personal. Oftentimes, it's not our stuff that we haven't dealt with someone else. Now we are dealing with us on a personal, in a full-blown relationship that we haven't dealt with, and our stuff now comes to indict us, so to speak. Relationship that we haven't dealt with. Our stuff shows up as a witness, testifying, so to speak, about us. It's interesting. Our stuff shows up as a witness. The man testifying, run about us to choose his career. It's interesting. Over building a relationship. The man testifying, run about, and most of over building a relationship. The things that we as men and most really self-induced. And the things that we as men, it's about women too. Most of what we are dealing with is self-induced. Now, and I did say this in a previous conversation too. Most of what we are dealing with is self-induced. Now, what we are truly dealing with in previous conversation too are the things that our parents have not dealt with. Now, what we are, and for some of us, it can be difficult to wrap our heads around that. Things that our parents have not dealt with. That is the reality. And for some of us, now, if you've gone to a doctor, wrap our heads around that, and in the last 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years, in most cases, doctors will ask you, now, if you've gone to a doctor, especially if you're dealing with something that is known 20, 30, 40 years history, maybe your parents dealt with it and their parents dealt with it, especially if you're now looking potentially at the same thing, the doctor, not knowing your history, might ask you, well, have your parents parents ever dealt with XYZ, whatever that thing might be.
The doctor,
And
knowing your history,
ideally, well, not all in all cases, that might be the case that your parents have dealt with it. Now, again, as I said earlier, I kind of spoke about this in a previous conversation, where it's that might be the case that your parents have dealt with it. Now, there's a DNA that we have all picked up from our previous conversation, where it's that might be the case. Okay, we don't just show up and say, "Oh, I'm Curtis. This is who I am." No, and no, and no, and no, and no. We show up and say, "Oh, I'm Curtis." Combination of who our parents were, who their parents were, who their parents were, and that ancestral loop, so to speak, of who our because the things that our great, however many greats there might be, grandfather did not deal with, it was passed on to his father. However many greats there might be, and can you imagine the many layers of stuff that we potentially are dealing with? However many greats there might be, and can you imagine the many layers of invisible man that we potentially are dealing with? He has decided that he's going to perfect his career. Invisible man. He is going to be a professional. And that's not a bad thing. He's going to perfect his career. Invisible man. He is going to be a professional. But the challenge is that he's lonely, and that's not a bad for reasons that he and his own parents didn't deal with. The challenge is that he's lonely. It becomes his reasons that he thing to overcome. Parents didn't deal with. Whether it be anger, jealousy, a host of different things that show up in the dynamics of our overcome. Parents didn't deal with. Whether it be anger, issues with your brother and your sister. Again, a host of different things that might show up within our families. Whether it be anger, issues that man has to be prepared to again unlock the door that might show up within our families. That keeps him bound. That man has to be prepared to. He needs to be unlock the door. Learn how to be present. That keeps him bound. In the present moment. Be available. To be unlock the door. In order to be prepared to unlock the door. Be available, because now he or she, you have to unlock this door to know what's behind it. Be prepared to unlock the door. And be available, because when you don't unlock the door, you have to unlock. We can presume that there's nothing behind it, but yet life is absolutely a witness to. There's something behind the door. There's nothing that we are, in some cases, unwilling to deal with. It's knocking on the door. In some cases, it's just knocking the door off the hinges. Because we've got one broken relationship after another. It's knocking on the door. We've got other things that are showing up personally in our lives. Because we've got one broken relationship. And most of these things, however many they are, other things that are showing up personally are related to our personal lives. And most of these things. Now, we've got the professional piece perfected. Other things that are showing up personally are related to. You can ask for a better person, a better gentleman. Now, we've got the professional piece perfected. You can design a better gentleman. You can ask for a better. He's got a better professionalism and the antics of the conversation, the networking. He has those things down. He knows exactly what to do. And the antics of the conversation, the networking. But when it comes to relationships, he knows exactly what to do. Oftentimes, his hands are tied. When it comes to relationships, he knows exactly. Figuratively speaking, but oftentimes, I have this visual in my mind of his hands being tied. Figuratively speaking, because oftentimes, I have this visual in my mind. He can't fix what he's unwilling to address. Figuratively speaking, nor does he have the language. I have this visual in my mind. In most cases, there's a term. Not in most cases, but there's a term that they use in psychology called arrested development. Language. And so in most cases, the man, even the woman, will call arrested development. Language. Make an effort on trying to establish a relationship. Even the woman. But when that relationship forges ahead and it hits a bump in the road, oftentimes this bump in the road is reminiscent of what he or she has already dealt with. Oftentimes, this bump in the road is reminiscent already dealt with, or she, and it frightens the bejeebies out of them. They've already dealt, and so when they hit that bump in the road, they go running for the heels. They've already dealt, and so when they hit in the relationship, and they go just say, "Hey, let's just call it. It just didn't work out." And so when they hit in the relationship, how many of those can you have throughout a course of a lifetime and say it just didn't work out? Hey, let's call it. It just didn't work out. Not see yourself. How many of those can you have throughout a course of a lifetime that needs to be? It just didn't work out. Hey, let's call it. It just didn't work out. Looked at, not see yourself. How many of those can you have? Our own behavior patterns need to be looked at. And call it. It just didn't work out. Looked at, not see how we view relationships patterns need to be looked at. We need to be prepared to assess our own selves. So whether you're a man or a woman, oftentimes these are the things that drive us to. So whether you're a man or focusing on our careers, oftentimes these are the things, and obviously careers are absolutely important, or having a stable job and professional space, and those things are great. Those are absolutely important. Not knocking those things, but stable job challenges. The conversation that we're having is that oftentimes these men are highly qualified in their respective careers. We're having is that oftentimes highly knowledgeable, highly skilled, and qualified what they do in their respective careers. But oftentimes they're going home to a highly quiet house, highly skilled, and qualified, even if there's someone there. But oftentimes they're going home to a highly quiet house. They're going home to a lonely house, even if there's someone there. So my job is to address these things as an executive coach, even if there's someone there. My job is to help women get through the tough times. My job is to come from an authentic space. My job is to help women get through to humble myself as I listen to my job is to come from an authentic space. My job is to help women get, and the goal is to have them as I show up in an authentic way. That's the goal. It doesn't always work out, and the goal is to have them as it also means that in an authentic way. Me having walked this space and still walk in this space. It's not one of those things that you just, well, I've done the work and that's it. It absolutely does not work that way. And still walk in this is one of those things where you just absolutely completely have to continue to educate yourself about yourself. This is one of those things where because just when you think you've got it cornered, you have to continue. There's another part of you that shows up, and you're like, where the heck did that come from? Because just when you think you've got it cornered, you have to continue. Even for me, shows up, and you're like, I'm still on the job, doing the work. So the work is a daily task for me, a daily responsibility. I'm still on the job, doing the work. As a leader, the work is so my job is to again help those men who are discovering this path and building. My job is to personal relationships, help those men that we can integrate the two who are personal and their professional lives, and building integrated leadership, personal relationships, because we want the men showing up and integrate the two as they will show up in their personal lives, leadership, they'll show up the same way in their professional lives as they will. Leadership starts at home. Leadership starts in here first, ladies and gentlemen. Not out there, but it starts in here. And if we cannot lead ourselves through the out there stuff that's going on in here, and if we cannot lead ourselves, rest assured, through that our teammates, stuff that's going on in our team members, I should say, they've got stuff going on in here too, rest assured, as well, that our teammates, and if we are as leaders unable to lead ourselves through that, they've got stuff that's going on in here, We can't regulate ourselves emotionally. We are, as leaders, unable to lead ourselves. We've got one foot in that's going on in here, and what society has established for us. Leaders, one foot out. We've got one foot in areas where we want to be better people, and so we can find ourselves being conflicted, pulled in areas, several different directions. We want to be better people, and so the goal of this conversation is to look at this invisible man, be better people, and to know that this invisible man is not the workings entirely of his own doing, and to know that this invisible man, there are many layers to the workings. The job is to help peel those layers back, so he can get to the essence of who he is. Because let's face it, without coming to the essence of who we are, get to the essence of who he is, we're lost. We can find ourselves building another man's house. And this is oftentimes where, like I used the term, arrested development in the same way. And this is oftentimes, and now this happens for women too, just people in general. We can find ourselves throughout the course of our life building another man's house. And here's what I mean by another man's house: building out the views of society, where society has us going in common that you don't even have time to stop and pause. Building out the views of society, because society says you have to have the answer right now. Society says that you have to perform, because society says you have to have the answer. Many of us are down, outright burnt out on perform. That was never the remedy. That was never the solution nor the answer to knowing thyself. It was a distraction. That was never the solution nor the answer. Now, I'm not to say to knowing thyself that work is not important. It absolutely is. That was never the solution nor the answer. Now, I'm not to say to knowing thyself that work is not important, but a much deeper level. If we as men have not, I'm not to say to knowing thyself that work is not, but a much understood what leadership is. We as men have not, that leadership is spiritual more than anything. First and foremost, what leadership is. We as men have, but what society and different leadership schools have created is a blueprint. But what of society, their ideas of leadership have created, and yet they go home to homes that are dysfunctional. Their ideas of leadership and their own relationships are broken. And yet they want to give us the blueprint on our jobs to what leadership looks like. Their own relationships are broken. And I find that very challenging to take on that concept. I find it very challenging to take on that concept because, and I find that very challenging. It just doesn't hold water. It's not worth its weight in. I find it very challenging. Weight in salt or gold. And I find that very challenging. It just doesn't hold water. It's not integral. It's not character. Weight in salt or gold. And I find that very challenging. And that oftentimes is what the leadership models that have been created. And I know there's many of them out there, but that is one of the biggest challenges that the leadership models create that have been created. And I know there's many of them out there, but like scientific based, so to speak. The leadership models created that have been created. And I know there's many of them there. And like, if a man can't lead himself in here, he for surely can't lead those people out there, because they're also in here as well. If a man can't lead himself in here, most of what we are dealing with is a huge distraction. Those people out there. And as a leader, we've got to be able to know what's a distraction and what's not. Know what's worth giving our attention and what's not. We've got to prioritize certain things in the midst of all this stuff that's going on called life. Worth giving our attention and the more we are in a place where we're prioritizing certain things, there's different things that show up in life. Worth giving our attention. The different noise. The more we are in a place where we're prioritizing that shows up in life, different things that show up in uninvited in most cases, but Nevertheless, it shows up in a place where we're, and that shows the less we spend time uninvited in most cases, the more we spend time away from knowing that and being able to, the less we spend time put this band together, this orchestra, being able to put it together, knowing that and being able to, the less time we spend with band together, this orchestra, being able to put it together, the more we can find ourselves, and being able to, the less time we spend unavailable to being able to truly healthy relationships, we can find ourselves, because in order to have healthy relationships, unavailable, you got to know what's unhealthy. Being able to truly healthy relationships, we can find ourselves, and you got to be a part of that process. You got to be a part of those emotions that show up. Truly healthy relationships, we can find ourselves, and you got to be a part. You've got to be available. You've got to be a part of those emotions that show up. But oftentimes you've got to be available. Summit. You've got to be a part of those emotions that show up. He oftentimes checks out. You've got to be available. Summit. You've got to be a part of those emotions. And so now when an opportunity shows up to have a relationship, a great relationship, maybe she's a great woman. And so now when that opportunity shows up, have a relationship, it can be difficult for us to, maybe she's a great woman, take hold of that opportunity. When that opportunity because I guarantee you, it can most cases, for us to, the woman is also looking for a safe place. When that opportunity because I guarantee, and if we as men have not, the woman is also safe haven within on the inside place, cut out the weeds and the thinking we has distracted us, the doubt, safe haven within on the inside, having overcome some of the stuff that our parents have dealt with. In most cases, our parents won't tell us. We won't know, overcome some of the stuff that what our parents have dealt with, or what they chose not to deal with, or what they decided to put on the back burner. We don't know those things. But rest assured, whether they have verbalized those things to us or not, decided to put on the back burner, we don't know those things show up. But rest assured, and in most cases, that's the very thing that you and I have been fighting. Those things show up. But rest assured, that's the very thing that drives us to a place where we just want to focus in on our careers. But rest assured, that's the very thing that drives us to focus on our professional achievements. We just want to focus in on our careers. And so in turn, focus on our professional, a wider scenario is created. We can become selfish people. And so in turn, because we ultimately a wider scenario is created. And so it becomes difficult making room for anyone else. And so when the disagreements, the arguments, for whatever it becomes reason or however minor, and so when the disagreements, the arguments, when they show up, it becomes reason or however minor, we're heading for the door. When they show up, it becomes reason or we're throwing our hands up. We're heading for the door. And knowing that when they show up, or at least not knowing that, all of this stuff that comes up, we're heading for the door. It's absolutely, and knowing that, or at least not knowing that, all of this stuff have just chosen someone that's pulling it out of you. And knowing that, or at least not. So these things are absolutely necessary. I've just chosen someone, and equally as necessary is to look at those things. So these things are what you're responding to, how you're responding, and equally as necessary. You might not even know or have the words on how you're responding to. How sometimes it's important just to sit with it. Equally as necessary. You might not even know or have the words on how we as men don't understand this, and again on a much deeper level. It can absolutely drive us to a place where we as men don't understand this, set on building a career. It can absolutely drive us to a place where rather than relationships that set on hold it all together, a career. It can absolutely drive us to a place where rather than relationships. You guys, this has absolutely been a great conversation. I hope that you have found some meaning out of it.
It can absolutely drive us to a
So,
place where
you guys, this has absolutely been a great conversation. I hope that you have, if you have any questions,
found some meaning
don't see
out
any
of it.
questions right now, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer some of those questions that you might have.
If you have any questions,
Again, guys, this is a conversation that I just started here. I am on
some of those
Substack and also on YouTube. So,
Again, guys,
again,
this is a
conversation that I just started here. This
I am
conversation has
on
been enlightening to you.
Substack
Give it a
and
thumbs
also
up.
on YouTube.
Make sure you
So, guys,
subscribe
again,
over on
this is a
YouTube.
conversation that I just
It's
started
at
here.
Men's Life Coaching over on
conversation has been
YouTube. Again,
enlightening
that's
to
the
you.
at sign
Give it a
Men's
thumbs
Life
up.
Coaching on YouTube.
Make sure
Subscribe
you
there.
subscribe
I don't have a
over
whole
on
lot of
YouTube.
subscribers, so
It's
part of me doing
at
this
Men's
Fireside
Life
Chat
Coaching over on
is
YouTube.
also
Again,
to
that's the at sign Men's
boost my
Life
numbers up
Coaching
as
on
well.
YouTube. Subscribe
So
there.
there's
I don't have
definitely
a
the
whole lot of
motivation
subscribers, so
for
part
that
of me
as
doing
well.
this Fireside Chat
Also,
is
I'm on
also to,
Substack, as I mentioned here.
boost my numbers up as well.
It's either Curtis
So,
Brooks
there's
or
definitely a
Men's
motivation
Men's Life
for that as
Coaching
well.
on Substack as well. So
I'm
similar to that,
to,
as I mentioned here,
boost my
YouTube.
numbers. It's either
So once again, guys, I hope this
or
conversation
Men's-
has been
Men's
helpful
Life
to you.
Coaching on
I
Substack
see I got a
as
couple
well.
of viewers on
So,
YouTube,
similar to
guys.
that,
Thank you.
YouTube.
So once again, guys, I hope this conversation has been helpful to you. I see I got a couple of viewers on YouTube, guys. Thank you. I do apologize to see you.
So once again, guys, I hope this conversation has been helpful to you.
Over here on YouTube. He says, I'm single and remaining single forever. I want to. I do apologize. Kind of get carried away with the conversation.
He says, I'm single and
Sometimes
remaining single forever.
I want to. I do apologize. Kind of get carried away with the
He
conversation.
says, I'm single and remaining single forever.
Oh, man, I wish I would have seen that. William says, Curtis, I have a lot of feedback going on. I think you have. Oh, man, a window open that's picking up. William says, Curtis, I have a lot of feedback going on. I think you have sound channel. A window open that's picking up. William says, Curtis, I have a lot of feedback going on. I think you have sound channel. Okay, I may have did that. I do apologize, man. Yeah, sometimes this stuff here, man, I tell you. William, you can call me Bill. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I think I may have just fixed it. So I did in fact have another channel open, man. So thank you for that. And I've been going strong here for a while. So hopefully I fixed that, Bill. So thank you, man, for looking out for me, brother. I appreciate that. So Ty Senya says, I'm not getting married or having kids or, yeah, that's definitely a choice, man. I think sometimes we, um, getting married and having kids is not for everyone, but know that, having someone in your life, man, is it can be great, man. It can be great, and you can have good days and bad days. But again, you oftentimes won't be able to become the person that you can become without someone pulling it out of you. And I hope that makes sense, man. And because I think in our own minds we can say, especially when we're without a relationship for a particular season in our lives, we can say, well, oh, I'm great. I'm a great person. I'm a great guy. This and that, whatever the case. I'm a nice woman, whatever the case, and not realize that the person that shows up in your life, they're gonna put you to the test, man or woman. They're gonna put you to the test, and it's not intentionally, but you put out certain information out there. And again, a lot of times when we have not been in relationships, we can find ourselves seeing ourselves in the best light that we can, and it truly takes someone else shedding a light on us, kind of, with that flashlight, those conversations that get into those dry areas, those difficult places in our lives, man. So hopefully that makes sense. So obviously, yeah, that's to your own, uh, I guess that's your own discretion if you want to get married. And marriage is not easy. Being single is not easy either, brother. Ty, or I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman. But Okay, he says, I want the gift from singleness from God. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with being single. Nothing wrong with being single. Nothing wrong with being single. It says, I wish I was single like Paul. Yeah, that's pretty single. Here's the thing. I think about singleness, and I'm not single currently, but I've been single before a few times. But I think in singleness, it's singleness not easy either, man. It's not. It's not. Because I think we all have those desires to connect with people. We all have those desires to connect with people, um, um, on an intimate level. On an intimate level, and there's nothing wrong with that. But know that as we're connecting with people on an intimate level, even if it's not on an intimate level, we're going to get this. We're going to get their stuff. They're going to get our stuff. And like I said throughout the conversation, if you were able to hear me, is that it's like threading a needle. It's like threading a needle. You have to humble yourself. You have to be intentional. You might have to take your glasses off to thread the needle, but and it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. My baby girl, man, is I got a 2-year-old, and she's absolutely lovely, man, and not always, and sometimes it's not always lovely, but it's doing relationships. It's coming out with the compassion that's needed to be the foundation for someone that small who doesn't know, but yet I can be the consistent compassion, not always, but sometimes I can come back to that place as needed. And so the relationships oftentimes, man, they're not necessarily just about us. It's about us giving to other people. All right, sis, I don't want to be in a relationship at all. Yeah, thank you, Bill, for that, man. Hopefully that you can hear me. I'm not sure if you're still here or not, but thank you for that. Yeah, so in fact, I did have another channel open, and I did not realize that. I must have clicked on that button by accident. So again, guys, thank you all for being a part of this conversation here. We're going to do more of these conversations here. So if you have connected with me over on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and I'll do better next time. I'll make sure that I don't have that other channel open by accident. So actually, that's the first time that has ever happened to me. So again, this is Fireside Chat with Curtis. My name's Curtis, and if you have any questions that I can answer for you, drop those comments either in Substack over on YouTube, and I will answer those questions as best as possible. So I'm going to go out, guys. I don't have a set time and date as I will be coming back for the Fireside Chat. I don't have a time yet. So on the show card, it's going to be without music, without an outro as well, because I don't have an outro. Maybe I connect with my good buddy Bill to set me up with music because I'm not familiar with Suno. I know a lot of people are using Suno, and I think that Bill has put together some nice jams over there from Suno. So either way, I'll have to try and reach out to Bill to see if he can help me out with that. So that being said, guys, again, going out without a outro, just a show card, and we'll talk with you later. Ciao for now. Bye bye. And going